Welcome to the BigTime Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches producing big-time results. On behalf of myself, Coach Gage Rozier, and co-host Coach Preston Pedersen, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to today's show. Before we get to today's episode, I'd like to recognize our amazing sponsors who allow us to bring this podcast to you for free. Our first sponsor is TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the leading software for high schools and colleges by providing coaches the ability to write programs online, generate over 13 reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with code BigTime, you will receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. Thank you to Hewitt and staff at TeamBuildr for their continued support. They do an amazing job. Our second sponsor is Optimum Nutrition Athletics. Athletes train hard to play at the highest level, and all that hard work raises the bar on muscle recovery. Optimum Nutrition's athletics program has industry-leading products that can help. Protein is key to muscle recovery, and Gold Standard 100% Whey, the world's best-selling whey protein powder, provides 24 grams of protein that mixes easily just using a spoon and a glass. Gold Standard 100% Whey is made in Optimum Nutrition's state-of-the-art facilities in Aurora, Illinois, and is banned substance tested by Informed Choice. Through Optimum Nutrition's athletic program, you can also get Pro Gainer for big athletes looking to become even bigger, and ready-to-eat protein snacks including Protein Crisp bars, cake bites, wafers, and almonds. After dominating the sports nutrition industry for over 30 years, newly created Optimum Nutrition Athletics brings that same trust and quality that knows how to put convenient options for protein in the hands of athletes who desire to become bigger, stronger, and better at their sport. If you'd like more information and free samples, email Derek Dwalters, Director of Optimum Nutrition Athletics, whose email and contact information you can find in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much to our amazing sponsors for their continued support. Now, let's get to today's episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the BigTime Strength Podcast. Today, I will be covering what I do to get ready for the start of the school year and anything that leads up to that first week of class. Before we get started with that, I just want to remind you guys, if you want to help Gage out with the Crush Cancer project that he's been working on for his cousin Riley, please do not hesitate to reach out to him. If you reach out to us at bigtimestrength@gmail.com, we'll get back to you on that stuff. Gage is putting together an ebook that he will sell, and all proceeds will go to Riley, his cousin, and then cancer research. Please keep Riley in your prayers. The dude's a strong dude, and I know he's got a long fight, but man, he is a strength coach at heart. Is a young strength coach, and I know he's going to be able to battle through a lot of adversity. So please keep on thinking of Riley for us. Today, starting out, as I think about how we set up our school year and all that type of stuff, I try to start out with a plan of thinking about where we are now and where we want to go. And that's kind of a holistic view of Mount Vernon High School, and something that just helps me guide my mindset and just beginning with the end in mind. So just a quote that really sticks out to me is, those that think long-term tend to make the best short-term decisions. So as I sit down to do the annual plan for the 2019-2020 school year, I made sure that I had all my important dates. So I get on the Iowa High School Athletic Association and the Girls Athletic Union, and I organize every important date. And for us, that's the start of a season. So volleyball, cross country, and football start next week. So the start of the season, and then when the championship part of the season starts, and then when the actual championship game is. And we're very fortunate at Mount Vernon. We'll have a very great opportunity this year to make a good run in every one of those sports. Cross country is kind of a perennial powerhouse, and they always do very, very well. Volleyball is ranked number 1 going in, and I think will surprise a lot of people in football. So what that allows us to do is extend our seasons a lot longer, but that kind of changes our training mindset a little bit too, and how we think about how we're going to structure the whole semester. So when I put it together, I'm a 4 week person, or 4 weeks equal a cycle for me. Okay. And we try to get 4 cycles in within a semester. It's about 18 weeks as a semester. And with the intro and testing and some of the things that we do, we'll use 16 of those weeks for training. And then those other 2 weeks will be the testing, any of the stuff just to onboard the kids, any of the, like Labor Day, Thanksgiving break, any of the things that kind of just throw the schedule off a little bit. Those are accounted for. But the idea with this thing is that we want to build a base. And the bigger the base that we have, the higher the peak. And the way that I see strength and conditioning is that it's the best general physical preparedness that you can have. When you get more strength, your glass gets bigger and everything else can fit within that glass. And I know there is a ton of talk about speed training as being maybe more important than strength, or some sort of relationship between the two has been talked about a lot. And for me, I see where speed training is a huge deal. I love being able to see that, but I also know when I got stronger relative to my body weight and the speed of movement, all that type of stuff, I got faster. And I can just look down the path of, my dad was my strength coach in high school. He was the strength coach for our high school. So all the way from entering my 7th grade year through 12th grade, and then obviously college, like I was able to track where I was at, and see the correlation anyway, between how I got stronger and where my speed came from. So I'm still a huge believer in making sure that we build a bigger base so that we can have a higher peak. And some of the things that come out of that is decreasing sport injury. And that's what we want, right? We want to be able to be more durable. Not saying that we won't ever get hurt, but more so when we do get hurt, even we get back faster. And that's some of the things that it's tougher to track, maybe year to year. There's some freak things that happen, whatever it is, but overall you should be able to get a general feel for that, and talking with your athletic trainers or your sport medicine staff and seeing where you're at with that, and always keeping them on board with everything that you're doing, just to make sure they think that we're covering all of our bases for, if it's ACL prevention, if it's just rolled ankles, how are you getting people back faster? Maybe it's just overall athletic wellness, right? For just like the holistic person, making sure that they're good from head to toe. So obviously the second part of building that bigger base is enhancing sport performance. And for us, like I think that includes movement competence, and the big one that maybe isn't talked about a ton, like we talk about numbers a lot, whatever, it's just building lasting confidence that can be carried over to your sporting event. If it's the field, the track, the court, the mat, whatever it is, being able to build confidence from knowing that you put in the time and the work and the effort to get better, and saying that is going to give you the edge to be able to compete at a high level. How we go about building a bigger base within class is we always perform a pre-programmed warm-up that's going to activate the desired muscles that we want. We want to make sure that it correlates with the training session that we're going to have. The big idea with this thing is making sure that the warm-ups is not just dynamic every day. And that's one of the traps that I've fallen into in the past. And one of the things I'm trying to retool is what it really looks like to be specific for the warm-up that we're doing that day. And if you've got categories that you're hitting every day, you're like, yes, I always need glute activation. I need to make sure that I've got my pattern groove for my squat. I got to get my heart rate up, those things. And if you're hitting them with the dynamic, that's great. But what I found with our students is the monotony of the warm-up can get to them. So, and there's no doubt there's got to be a place of being able to come in and get the job done day in and day out. But for us, having the variability of the warm-up helps us out, and it also keeps us fresh, it exposes the athletes to more training, truly, if we're doing it right, because we kind of use that warm-up time as more volume, not that it's like heavy weights or anything like that, but just more so as far as movement competence. And then the next thing that I'll talk about for building a bigger base is just being active on the floor. I just read Simply Faster article by Coach Hoover, and he's killing it with his articles on Simply Faster. I can't wait for when his stuff comes out. But he was just talking about some of his biggest pet peeves or some of the things that just set him off within strength and conditioning. And one of them was write the workout up on the marker board and then go sit in the office and talk with the coaches or something to that effect. And for us to build a bigger base, first of all, I think we need to be on fire for our profession. I think we need to be on fire for helping our student athletes out. But the second thing is just be a teacher in there. Like coaching is teaching. And if we're really going to get down to building a bigger base and helping our athletes improve, it's not just going to be writing the workout on the board. And, you can design whatever you want to design workout wise. It's teaching. And that's maybe the biggest thing I saw going from the collegiate level to the high school level is the amount of teaching that is needed from, your block zero kids all the way to your juniors and seniors that have been with you for, maybe middle school all the way through, 5 or 6 years. So it's really, really cool to see when kids progress, right? And for us, what we do is we kind of progress the exercises slowly. We want to use plenty of relatable cues for that and something that's just going to connect with them. And then the other thing that we've got into a lot more is just filming our stuff. When we film, it can just be a quick one. Sometimes it's just me on my phone. I'll just use the iPhone camera app, right, and just film them. Show them to slow it down, slide it through. They can see their movement. They see it, great, and I move on to the next person. Some of the things that we have to fix or whatever. It's just one more way for our athletes to see how they're doing on their lift, especially if I'm cueing something and they're not being able to get it done, man. It's just nice to be able to do that very quickly and show them. So maybe some of the ways that I like to teach is just a regular demo it with myself, being able to cue them, and then obviously being able to show them what they look like. And those are some of our go-to ways for that. One of the apps that I'm getting into a little bit is Huddle Technique, and I think Huddle Technique bought out somebody. I can't remember who it was, but they already had stuff rolling, and Huddle Technique I think is a pretty cool setup. I know some people really utilize that and they use it for grading, and we're moving into a standard-based grading type of system, and I'm interested to see coaches, if you guys use that type of deal just to be able to document and show evidence of improvement. I'm interested to see how you guys are using maybe Huddle Technique or other ways to be able to track that evidence. The next thing is we progress our exercise loads in a systematic way. And to be really honest, we're not complicated at all. I believe in linear periodization for youth athletes. I believe in linear periodization for anybody that's a beginner. And you'll see with our athletes, the super dedicated athletes, by the time they get to a senior year, they might have some times where they feel like they're hitting sticking points, and we'll change some things up junior, senior year for them. But freshman and sophomore years especially, we are very, very linear. And for those of you that are getting into strength and conditioning, linear periodization basically just means at the beginning, we're going to have more volume, but the load is going to be less, right? So we're going to be able to do more reps, but it's with a very, very manageable weight. And one of the things that you'll see, maybe if you're taking your CSCS, if you're in your exercise science classes, just the being able to coordinate the muscles, right? Being able to coordinate movement is one of the reasons why people get so much stronger from maybe week 1 to week 4, is just because they're coordinating their movement patterns and they're able to, recruit more muscle fibers, or intermuscular and intramuscular coordination goes up. So then strength goes up, or seemingly, right? And for us, when we do that linear periodization, we have more reps at the beginning. It allows us to have basically practice time, right? And then as we get better and as we progress within the semester, what we'll do is the reps will go down and the intensity goes up, and that's basically linear periodization in a nutshell. And I mean, like there's some things that we'll do or we'll talk about later on that you'll be like, well, it's not truly linear periodization when you give them the autonomy, when we auto regulate. And yeah, it's close. The ideals of it is very linear. And then the last thing is, we as coaches, we have to be able to regress, modify, and progress exercises to fit the needs of all of our athletes. And that doesn't mean, like when we come in, you have to have everything listed out on your sheet. That was a trap that I fell into. I'm like, oh my gosh, every time I program, I'm going to program 50 exercises so I can have the regressions and progressions. What I found out over time is just being able to see something. So if we're dumbbell goblet squatting with our freshman group, block 0, and they're really struggling with the dumbbell goblet squat, like they can't hit those spots, we're going to drop the dumbbell and we're going to regress it back, and we start out with, we'll do an overhead PVC pipe is one of the first things that we'll do for squat movement. And this overhead PVC pipe lets us see if they're staying in position. And then I'll progress the group on to that dumbbell goblet squat. And if somebody's struggling with that, we'll just bring them right back to the PVC overhead squat. And for just the ins and outs of regressions and progressions, that's where, coaches on the floor make a difference, in their teaching. Because if you're not doing that, man, you're putting your athletes in harm's way. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there. The one that I hear a lot talk about this is Gary Schofield talks about do no harm, right? He's got an athletic training background that's kind of like a sport medicine or medicine in general's kind of code of conduct. The very first rule is do no harm. And that's what we're looking for, is we want to make sure that we're being smart with the way that we program. If we're iffy on any of that stuff, man, that sets us up for failure. And maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, definitely. And like if you would listen to when Gage interviewed me, my whole goal is long-term wellness, right? So I think I just saw Joe Eisman just put out something or was retweeting it maybe, and was talking about 93% of your athletes won't go on to college sports. So what's the point of everything that we're doing? And for me, it was looking at how can we be active the rest of our life? And it doesn't have to be strength and conditioning, but I think it's a really good intro to movement competence and giving them the confidence for whatever they're going to do. If it's, mountain climbing and kayaking, that's great, as long as we're out there and staying active. So we'll always shoot for quality over quantity, and never load that dysfunction. So if we see something that's messed up, we'll regress them. And as far as the progressions, I really, I don't progress athletes faster than anybody else. I try to keep it somewhat all together. That keeps me sane, so I don't see 80 different exercises in the weight room. But also, if our goal is to slow cook them, that's a term that's used a lot. If our goal is to have a progression and make sure that we get enough dose of each movement or exercise rather, then I'm not going to progress people too fast. I don't see any need for that. And there is a place for variety. There is no doubt a place for variety, but repetition is truly what gets you to groove your movements well. So those are some of the things that I think about, and the other things that, start to go into this annual plan is the time constraints. And, within high school athletics, you guys are all going to be like this. The time constraint that I have is going to be based on our class schedule, right? And right now, just so I can explain it to you guys so you have a little bit better understanding of where I'm coming from, we do a modified block schedule, meaning if you can think of a normal period schedule, like where you go first through seventh period, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have that for part of the week. And then we also have a block schedule where the classes that we just scheduled out, and I said the period type schedule, 1, 3, 5, and 7 would meet on block day number 1, and then 2, 4, 6 would meet on block day number 2. And then we have this thing called MTSS that we've used during this, like what we would call 8th block, which is kind of like only used on block days. Well, it's going to change a little bit this year for us, but the idea is 3 times a week we have 41-minute classes, and 1 time a week I get a 75-minute class, and that is work time. So that the class periods are a little bit longer than that, but excluding changing and showering, my work times are 41 and 75. And that allows a great, like, I love having the block day in there because that allows me the best of both worlds. I know some people that are just truly on the block schedule, they'll see their athletes either 2 times a week or 3 times a week, which is awesome because they have a huge chunk of time with them. But I like to see them on more days. So what this allows me to do is every week I get a taste of the longer class period, but also the shorter ones, and we're always meeting 4 times a week. So that allows me to work around some of our athletic schedule a little bit more. You look like at maybe your class is meeting a Tuesday, Thursday in a block schedule, and you're a volleyball player, and you're playing Tuesday, Thursday that week. Yes, we're still going to train in those, but my stipulation for my athletes is we're still doing the exercises. Our load changes, and they have a little bit more say in how they're moving and progressing their load. So for that situation, they're not going to progress quite as well as if that week maybe would have been a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for them in the weight room. So I like having the modified block just to kind of touch into both worlds there. Each semester that we start out, we kind of have this reset time. So it doesn't matter what grade you are. Every semester, we're going to kind of reset back up, restart, make sure that our movements are proficient, that they're looking good, that we understand what the base is before we work toward, like maybe just to give you an example, the way that we progress for squat is at the beginning of the semester. It doesn't matter if you're a junior or a freshman or a senior or a sophomore, does not matter across the board. We'll start out with a PVC overhead squat at the very beginning, the first week of class, making sure that everybody's proficient. It's kind of like our movement assessment, but I don't document it just because of the number of athletes and being able to do things on the run. And then the next week, we'll go right into a dumbbell goblet squat. For the older athletes, they'll progress out of that quicker, but the younger athletes, they'll stay with it for longer. And then we'll move into a front squat. And then after that front squat, so for the older athletes, the juniors and seniors, they'll progress a little bit faster to a safety squat bar. And for the freshmen, sophomores, they'll stay with the front squat a little bit longer. Then we have the safety squat bar, and then we'll finish out with back squat. And each one of those times are different for the freshmen, sophomores, and the junior, seniors. That's kind of how I split them up. Works for us pretty well for class scheduling. But that transition of going from dumbbell goblet squat, where it's kind of a little bit more front weighted, right? It allows you to have a counterbalance and sit back a little bit more, no doubt. But like the weight is in the front, so you're feeling that just like that anterior tilt, or not tilt, but that pull towards the front just a little bit more. And then same thing with that front squat, allows you to sit back and have a great movement pattern, but it's still sitting on the front of you, so that once we get to that safety squat bar, it's not truly a front squat, it's not truly a back squat. It kind of sits the weight right in between those two. So now we're moving the weight a little bit further back, and then obviously finishing with that back squat, the weight is moved the furthest back. So the way that we do this is I believe that we're getting exposed in a good way, and with the progression to moving the weight from the front of our body to the back of our body, with some good, 4-week cycles. I'm getting at least for my younger athletes 4 weeks of dumbbell goblet squat before they'd ever even have the opportunity to move to front squat. And then another 4 weeks before they'd have the opportunity to move to safety squat bar. And then once again, and I know some coaches wouldn't do this, but back squat's one of the main lifts that we'll have in our program. I still believe in it. It will be the last 4 weeks if they progress that far. If they have, and that's not based off of load. That's based off of movement quality for us. I used to do some strength standards that they'd have to hit, but then I realized, man, it's way different I had I had 100-pound dude, and he's an animal. He just gets after. He had 100-pound dude that was trying to hit his strength standard with the dumbbell goblet squat that I probably shouldn't have had him doing, but he did it, right? And it was awesome because he knew that the challenge was there. And his movement quality was good. But it's, for me, I did not have to see that strength standard for him to progress on to a front squat. He was proficient way before that. So that's something that I've used and that I've learned with along the way. But I think we don't want strength just for the sake of strength. We want strength that's going to enable you to perform better as an athlete. And I think that's Dr. Yesus. And the idea with all of our strength and speed classes is we're not powerlifters, we're not bodybuilders. We'll use some of those principles, no doubt, but like we're trying to train to be athletes. And so what that looks like for us for building that long-term plan is just a little bit different, right? It's not like I have to have max weights for every week, right? Is there a place for max effort? Yes. Am I going to do max effort every week? Probably not, because for my younger kids, there's not a shot that I need to put them in a max effort situation when they're still learning. And for my juniors and seniors, depending on their sports schedule, we have some 4-sport athletes and 3-sport athletes that, like max effort work, I need to make sure that they're strong at certain points, but I have to be very smart of where I place those. And our intensity will be high, no doubt, but we're going to be more of we're going to be more of 85 to 90 at some points instead of the 92s to 95s and even higher than that. There's just certain times where I don't feel as comfortable with that. If you guys have listened recently to Mike Boyle's been putting out there. The guy that's been putting out there a lot is Tony Holler. He talks about not burning the steak, right? Nobody really likes a burnt steak. That's not the way that we want to do it. And he says overtraining is like a burnt steak or burning your steak, and you can't undo that damage. So crushing an athlete prevents daily gains, and that's really what I try to put in perspective. I was talking to Tony Stewart, strength coach over at North Scott. And his philosophy is he's kind of like, it's like prescription medicine, right? The doctor is never going to prescribe more than what you need, right? The smallest effective dose is what we're looking for. And I think that's the analogy or the picture that he tries to use. And I really like that one, because if a huge workout destroys the rest of the week, what have we really accomplished, right? I don't know where this quote was from, but I love this one. Overtraining creates blisters. Balance training creates calluses. And that was one of mine I just wrote down on my note cards, man. I love that idea, because if we overdo it, man, a blister sucks. But if we're right on the money, man, those calluses protect your hands, whatever you're talking about, man, that's what we want. That's slow adaptation to the imposed demand that we want. So I like the idea of just being able to go in, get good quality work, good movement proficiency. And if you stay the long haul, if you're consistent day in and day out from when you're a freshman to when you're a senior, putting, all of the puberty and stuff aside, I mean, you're going to get stronger. And then you throw puberty in there on top of that, you're going to gain a lot of confidence in a really short amount of time, really. 4 years over that course of time to change your body that much is pretty crazy. So with that idea, never letting today ruin tomorrow helps guide my programming while I'm doing my annual plan. So some of the guiding principles that I use, and this is every strength coach, right? But just the specific adaptations to imposed demands, the SAID principle, has to be something that we're thinking about. It's like, do we want to be super sports specific? No, not at all. I'm very general with my programming. I believe we should push, we should pull, we should squat, we should hinge. We should make sure that we have movement quality that just like transcends sports, right? It can be anything that we're doing. We should be able to be functional within that. And then I believe it's the sport coach's job to be sport specific, right? Like swinging a baseball bat, I'm going to do some med ball throws, no doubt, with with all my athletes though, not just my baseball, softball players. It's the idea that we need to be versatile in everything that we do. So the SAID principle is the first one that I look to, and then the systematic progression of just saying or being able to defend why you're doing one progression into the next or one exercise into the next cycle, and maybe put some defense or be able to defend why you're doing the number of days that you're doing for the number of weeks that you're doing. And if you're not able to voice those things, if you're not able to say, hey, this is the reason why, then it's really tough to be able to explain the why to your kids. And that's, for me, I think when kids see results, they set goals and they hit those goals, you'll get buy-in. I also think when you explain the why behind things, you'll get buy-in. And I really think that being able to explain the why is an important piece to our job. And then the last one is the KISS principle. We just talked about it at the beginning of football. I also coach football. It's when we're doing our progressions for our EDDs, our daily drills, it's keeping it simple. How can we stack what we've learned on top of on what we need to learn on top of what we've already learned, and just keep on making it simple progressions toward the goal. So I tell my athletes, we want to be in the stretch zone. So if you imagine a target, the middle of the target, it's the comfort zone. It's actually counterintuitive. I don't want you to hit the middle. I just want you to think of a circle, right? So you have the circle, it's the comfort zone, and just right outside the comfort zone, a bigger circle, there's the stretch zone. And within that stretch zone, that's where we need to stay, because that stretch zone allows us to get out of our comfort zone and not be so comfortable that we're not seeing progression. But also on the other side of that, we're not being so uncomfortable that we're not seeing a progression, that we're not getting better. So elite coaches are able to build confidence in their athletes while helping athletes work toward their larger goals. And elite coaches find a way for their athletes to get out of their comfort zone, but not too far out of their comfort zone, enough just to learn. I think within education, they talk about stretch goals, right? You set a goal that's just right outside your reach. You have to stretch for that goal, and then you set another and another and another. And it's that idea of always reaching just for a little bit more, not overreaching, just a little bit more. All right, so what does it look like for an actual annual plan with the mindset of building it for a whole year? And then on top of that, stacking year upon year on year, where you have freshman to senior, what that progression would look like. For my yearly breakdown, I look as the macro cycle is for a year. So I know something like if they're an Olympian, or maybe even high school coaches will do a macro cycle is like the whole course of 4 years and what it looks like, and then break down mesos within that, and then micros within that. For me, I do 1 year at a time, and then kind of a larger view of the freshman to senior year is thought outside of this. So 1 year is a macro cycle, and then 3 phases are mesocycles. So I'll do phase 1, where it's basically the fall semester, phase 2, where it's basically the spring semester, and then phase 3, which is the summer. And those 3 phases are broken down into they're almost even splits. So we will have about 4 months for each one of those sections. There's some overlap, and like we're starting school August 23rd, so it's a Friday. We're starting school August 23rd. I'm wrapping up some of my summer training during that time, and then we'll move right into our first week of training on onboarding our student athletes and getting them ready to roll again for the school year. So if you guys want an example, I've got my I can post my 2018-2019 school year, or you guys can reach out for it. I'll show you how I put together my annual plan. I've seen, like, at the back of the tier system book, Joe Kinn's book, Strength Coach's Playbook. He shows a really nice way to put together an annual plan. It didn't work for me as well, just because there's so many variables with the multi-sport athlete. I tried to hit major holidays anytime we're out of school, tried to hit all of our championship seasons, and then overlay when I'm doing maybe my hypertrophy work or my strength work or my power work or my peaking, that type of stuff. So I kind of just try to overlay all those and be able to see in one spot all the important days that I need to make sure that I'm programming around. And then once I get to the designing the program, it's pretty like the essentials text. I'm trying to look at what our needs analysis is, looking at what are the weak points for our student athletes, for our population. And for me, the needs analysis, we always have to consider the training age. And for us, the training age and the actual biological age are pretty low. I mean, so for me, when I say that I'm a linear guy, it's not because I truly be linear in every circumstance, but for the circumstance that I'm in, that's why I choose the progression that I do. The exercise selection that I do is we will have some variability within our exercises, but like it's horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull, squat, bilateral squat, unilateral squat, hinging from multiple positions, unilateral, bilateral, lunging, carrying weights, core stability, anti-rotation core stability, like the categories somewhat stay the same. The exercises that are thrown into those categories will change. And that's where, we have for the fall, I'll put together my categories that I want. So I have the categories, how to progress on certain days. And for that fall, I'll just plug and play with the exercises if it fits into the category. And then the spring, I'll change where the categories fit, how it kind of lays out for the class, knowing that our spring sports are going to end at a certain time, where I want those to lay at. And I've got my categories for that. And then I'll do the same type of deal for the summer where I choose my categories. And then for each cycle, I will place my exercises in there as a progression. So maybe like another way to see like a progression. So I told you about my squat, where I'll go from PVC overhead to dumbbell goblet to front to safety bar to back squat over the course of a semester. And then we'll do that all again during the second semester. And then during the summer, it kind of changes a little bit. We don't quite do that whole progression for our summer training, just because it's a smaller block of training for our actual camp. But the thing that I do for progression, maybe for a push-up, is we will start our push-up stuff from an incline position. So we don't ever go from our knees anymore. I used to. We read a few articles, thought about it. Just being able to put our body in a correct position for a push-up, I think needs to start from the very beginning. So for a push-up, we will start by putting our hands maybe on a bench or on the safety bars, something like that. And we'll do our press down to a bar or down to the bench and then pressing back up, making it a little bit easier. And then obviously work down to the floor. And then maybe we'll do hand lift push-ups, and then we'll do feet elevated push-ups, right? It's simple, right? Everybody knows this stuff, but taking every exercise category and doing that type of progression. So we'll do posterior chain knee dominant. Okay. And then I want to do some sort of hamstring curl progression. So we'll probably start out with a physio ball, 2 feet on it. So like an exercise ball, 2 feet on it. And we'll do a hamstring curl. And then we'll progress to a glute ham roller, 2 feet on it, hamstring curl. And then we'll go physio ball, single leg, hamstring curl. And then we'll do a glute ham with a band on it attached to it. And then we're doing a single leg hamstring curl, right? So the progression, either intensity or the complexity or the difficulty, goes up for that particular exercise. And, whatever it is, however you can justify it. Maybe you flip those around and you say the glute ham rollers first because you don't have to stabilize the ball as much. Whatever it is for you to justify it. For every exercise category, I do that, and I make sure that there's a progression. And I'll just take our athletes all the way through that progression multiple times. So hopefully, kids are in my class the first semester and the second semester. If they're not in the second semester, then they do it before after school. with their sport teams, which the progressions are about the same, but the instruction time isn't quite as long. So that's the tough part for me. But let's say over the 8 semesters that I have you in high school, you would be exposed to those movement categories over and over and over. And the variability seems different, but it's still a posterior chain knee dominant exercise. So that's where I try to make sure that my progressions and regressions are all right where I need them. Training frequency, like for us during the school year, we'll do 3 times a week. And if there's somebody that's out of season, I'll do like some supplemental stuff, some like filling in the gaps type of stuff before, after school, where we call them extras. And then we're lifting a little bit more than 3 times a week, but it's all systematic that way. But for the most part, it doesn't matter if you're in season, out of season, it's 3 times a week. If you are not in my class and you're in season, it's only 2, but you're still getting the meat and potatoes. So that's the way that we've worked around people's schedule. If they've got a heavy schedule, they're still doing sports, we'll just do different sessions outside of the actual school day. Exercise order for me, I do a tier system, or at least a modification of the tier system. So for our exercise order, I like having the constraints, or the system anyway, of being able to plug my exercises in where I think they should go based off of the kind of the tier principles. If you want to know more about the tier, definitely reach out to, there's a ton of high school level coaches that use tier programming. I think Joe Kinn's book is super helpful, but being able to sit down with a coach and talk through it and the way it looks is also very helpful. So read the book and then reach out to somebody, and that should explain almost all the way through why the tier is very, very important. Designing the program, for me, like the load and repetitions, the volume and the rest intervals are all stuff that I continue to tweak a little bit, but I truly think all of those things are almost, for me, like I want higher repetitions at the beginning when you're freshman, sophomore, so that we have more learning, right? It's kind of like the 1x20 thought process is, if we can have solid reps where we're learning over that course of time, that's awesome, right? If we're doing not very many reps and high intensity and it's all crap reps, then we're really not getting anything out of it. But that reps, the training load, the volume in general, the rest intervals, all that type of stuff, I'm still playing with, and I'm trying to learn a lot more about how I'm trying to implement our rest intervals in a systematic way. So to summarize, and I love this one by Brett Bartholomew, he says, don't overcomplicate training. Lift weights at different loads, at different volumes, at different speeds, in different ways, different times of the year, right? So, and I know that still sounds complicated, but it's like, yeah, we want the variability, but a system with it. So I'm going to talk about what we measure, and then after that, I'll kind of sign off, and I can do later on. I'll probably do another one of these where I go a little deeper dive into how we set up our program for fall, spring, summer. So what we measure, we call them KPIs. It's kind of stolen from the business world, but it's the key performance indicators, and what we measure matters. And so like, yeah, and I think you hear that a lot. I've heard it, multiple coaches say it, what you measure matters, because that's what kids really focus on. Going back to the Tony Holler stuff. Tony Holler, he records, ranks, publishes everything. And so like every time he's recording information, he's ranking it and then publishing it to the kids so that they can see it. And it adds competition, all that type of stuff. I think if you measure it in general and people can see the progression of how they're getting better, I think that truly matters also. So for us, hang clean, back squat, bench press, weighted pull up, push up, pull up, vertical jump, standing long jump, which is just a standing broad jump, 10-yard dash, and then a 5-10-5 are the things that we measure. And there's 10 of them. And I know, I know there's coaches that just measure 3 of them and that's it. That's all they need to know if an athlete's getting better. I like to have more tests because it's more opportunities for athletes to see improvement. So it's not like, man, I need to know their bench press, but I also need to know how many push-ups they can get in a minute. Like, I need that as a coach, but rather I want student athletes to see that they're getting stronger in multiple ways. And so we'll do a pull-up for repetitions, but we also do a weighted pull-up where it's a max weight thing. Well, there's some people that are going to be able to do way more pull-ups, and then their max weight for whatever reason isn't there where they need it yet. So they can see some of the deficiencies that they might have also. So guys, this is just the first little bit of this stuff. I'll try to get back on here later in the fall. Football's rolling here, and do a little bit more of this. Next week, Coach Rozier will be back on, and we'll get back into the groove of every other time, getting our college and high school coaches on. This is something that really excites me, man. I love being on an academic schedule because this is a fresh start. This is a new start to a new year. No matter where you're at before as a coach or the student athletes were at last year, it does not matter, man. It's that continual improvement. And then I love our football program this year is using 1%, right? And a lot of people have used this stuff, you know what I'm talking about, but how can you get just a little bit better today? And I love the mentality of going into a new school year with the opportunity, the fresh start to get better every single day. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.